Picture this. You're standing in the middle of a glowing, pristine server room, rays of blinking lights, that low, steady hum of cooling fans, just pushing cold air through the racks.
The classic data center vibe.
Exactly. Cables perfectly managed in those tight, colorful bundles. And right there in the center of the aisle, holding a microphone in one flipper and like a sweaty, condensation-covered blue can in the other, is a penguin.
Huh, naturally.
Wearing a tuxedo.
It is quite the visual, I have to say, and honestly perfectly fitting for the world we're stepping into today. It's formal, it's highly technical, but with that distinct underlying sense of open source humor you find across Linux environments.
Yeah, welcome to this deep dive. Whether you're currently cramming for a major certification exam or, you're just someone who wants to sharpen your system administration skills and understand what actually happens under the hood of a server, you are in the right place. Today, we're pulling from an advanced independent training series dedicated to cracking the RHCSA. That's the Red Hat Certified System Administrator exam. We're looking specifically at Season 2, Scenario 8.
Right, which is episode 33, specifically focusing on Regex Log Archiving. And just for context, Season 2 of this series encompasses episodes 26A through 50.
Oh, perfect. Thanks for the context. So we're looking at this high-stakes, real-world scenario. The security compliance team is knocking on your door.
Oh, the dreaded compliance team.
Yeah, and they don't want excuses. They want data. Specifically, they need a compressed archive of all authentication failures pulled from a custom application log.
And they don't just want a messy, raw text file either. It needs to be perfectly parsed, securely archived, and strictly owned by a specific audit user account.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because before we can be the hero who hands over the requested evidence, we actually had to build the testing environment first.
Yeah, you can't just dive in.
Right. I like to think of this setup phase less like cording off a crime scene and more like, I don't know, prepping an operating room before surgery. You have to ensure your tools are sterilized, your equipment is powered on, and the correct personnel are scrubbed in before you make that first incision into the data.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it. You can't just start slicing into system files. We have to lay the groundwork, operating entirely as the root user.
Okay, so where do we start?
The absolute first step is ensuring our primary surgical tool, the archiving utility, TAR, is actually available on the system. The source details a specific programmatic command sequence to handle this. It goes, if !RPM-Q tar, then DNF install -y tar, phi.
Okay, looking at that syntax, it reads like a simple if-then statement. If querying the system doesn't show tar, then go ahead and install it. But wait, why take the extra step to query it first? I mean, if I know I need tar, why not just run DNF install tar immediately and just let the package manager figure it out?
That's a great question. It really comes down to efficiency and system overhead. You see, DNF is a heavy package manager. When you invoke it, it has to, load plugins, synchronize metadata from remote repositories, and calculate these really complex dependency trees.
Oh, right. Which takes time.
Exactly. It takes time and processing power. By contrast, running RPM-Q is a purely local, almost instantaneous query directly to the installed package database.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so if the tool is already there, the script bypasses all that heavy lifting entirely. And if it does need to install, that -y flag on the DNF command automatically assumes yes to any installation prompts. That ensures the automation doesn't hang up just, waiting for human input.
That makes perfect sense. We're optimizing for speed and minimizing unnecessary network calls. So the tools are ready. Now we need our personnel scrubbed in, to use the analogy.
Right.
If compliance is taking custody of this data, we can't just leave the final archive owned by the root user, right? We need a dedicated custodian. So we run user-add-audit-admin to create that specific functional account.
Exactly. And with the personnel in place, we need the actual data. The mock application log, the source, shows us generating this dummy data using the echo command.
Yeah.
Specifically, it's echo-e followed by a really long single string of text that contains several \n characters, and all of that is piped into a file called /tmap/mock-app.log.
Yeah, I've used echo countless times just to dump quick notes into a text file. But that -e flag really stands out. If I'm remembering my shell basics, that flag is telling the shell parser to actively evaluate the string rather than just printing raw text.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It enables the interpretation of \escapes. Without that -e flag, the parser treats \n literally.
Oh, so just print the actual characters.
Yeah, it would just print a backslash followed by the letter N, leaving you with one massive, unreadable line of text. By enabling the evaluation, the system interprets those characters as new line commands, breaking that single long string into 4 beautifully formatted, distinct lines in our mock log file.
Wait, looking at the contents of those 4 generated lines, my admin instincts are kind of firing here. We have an authentication failure, we have normal operation, we have failed password for root, and a connection successful.
Yep, that's the mix.
But why generate this specific mix? If the goal of the lab is to practice finding errors, why pollute the log with all the normal stuff?
Because pollution is the default state of reality. Real application logs don't neatly separate the good from the bad.
That is very true.
Right. A production log will have hundreds of thousands of lines of normal, healthy operations. The benign traffic just mixed right in with the critical failures. The examiners and real-world compliance teams, for that matter, they need to know that you can filter the noise. They need to verify that your extraction methods are precise enough to pull out the anomalies without accidentally sweeping up the standard operations.
Okay, so the haystack is officially built, and we know exactly what our needles look like. The mock log is sitting in the temporary directory. So let's get to the actual extraction. We're staring at this dense log file, and the compliance team is tapping their watches.
Time is money.
Exactly. How do we pull exactly what they want without grabbing those false positives?
We use grep. It's the standard tool for searching plain text data, but we can't just use basic grep here. The requirement is to find lines containing either the word failure or the word failed with a capital F.
Right.
To do this efficiently, we use grep with the -E flag, which activates extended regular expressions. The full command provided in the source is grep-E, quote, failure pipe, failed, end quote, /tmp/mockapp.log greater than /tmp/auth-errors.txt.
Regular expressions, regex. That's a concept that usually sends junior admins running for the hills, honestly, because the syntax is like absolute gibberish at first glance.
It really does, but what's fascinating here is how the extended regular expression fundamentally changes your workflow at the processor level.
How so?
Well, by adding that -E flag, we activate the ability to use the pipe character, that vertical bar between our two search terms, as a logical OR operator. We're basically telling the regex engine to compile a state machine that scans each line of the log file exactly once, checking for both distinct patterns simultaneously.
Okay, let me challenge this approach,
Yeah.
especially in the context of a high-pressure exam. I understand that the single command is elegant, sure.
It is.
But if I'm nervous, and my mind just goes blank on regex syntax, couldn't I just run a simple grep command twice? Like I could run grep failure and send it to the file, and then run grep failed and send it to the same file. It just feels safer than risking a syntax error.
It might feel safer in the moment, but you're introducing massive risk on multiple fronts by doing that. First, there's the sheer computational cost. If you're auditing a live 10-gigabyte production log, running 2 separate grep commands means you're forcing the system to read that entire massive file from the disk twice.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be heavy.
Yeah, that disk I/O can severely bog down a busy server. But the more immediate fatal flaw in an exam setting is the redirect operator, greater than sign.
Because a single greater than sign tells the shell to overwrite the target file entirely, not add to it.
Correct. If you run your first simple grep with a single greater than sign, you successfully capture half your errors into auth-errors.txt. But when you run the second simple grep with that same symbol, the shell destroys the first batch and replaces it with the second.
Oh man, so you'd lose half the data.
Exactly. To append the new data, you'd have to remember to change your syntax and use 2 greater than signs for the second command. It's an incredibly common trap under pressure. The single grep-E command processes the data in one pass, uses one redirect, and basically reduces your margin for human error to 0.
Yeah, it paints a very clear picture. One pass, one redirect, maximum efficiency. So now the auth-errors.txt file is sitting in the /tmp directory, populated with nothing but the exact failures the compliance team asked for.
Safe and sound.
But handing them a raw, loose text file in the temporary directory is a great way to fail an audit. It needs to be securely packaged.
It absolutely must be bundled, compressed, and access controlled. For the packaging phase, we return to the tar command. The syntax we execute is tar-czvf/opt/ audit-evidence.tar.gz/tmp/auth-errors.txt.
Okay, let's dissect that cluster of flags after the tar command. The CVF, I know C stands for create because we're making a new archive, and F specifies the file name, which always has to be the last flag in the cluster.
Right.
And V is verbose, telling the command to print its progress to the screen. But the -Z flag, that's telling tar to pass the data through gzip compression, correct?
It is. And understanding the mechanism of gzip explains why compression is universally mandated for log files. Gzip relies heavily on algorithms that search for repetitive data. It basically looks for recurring strings of text and replaces them with short mathematical pointers back to the original string.
And log files are practically defined by repetition. The same server host names, the same timestamp formats, the same standardized error codes just printing over and over again.
Exactly. Because log files are so highly repetitive, the dictionary compression used by Gzip is remarkably effective. A raw text log file that takes up hundreds of megabytes of disk space can routinely be crushed down to just a few megabytes.
Wow.
Yeah, it makes storing and transferring audit evidence vastly more efficient.
Now, as we execute that tar command, the source material highlights a very specific warning message that will pop up on the screen. It informs you that tar is automatically removing the leading slash from the member names.
Yes, that always catches people off guard.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. I absolutely love this default behavior because it operates exactly like a mechanical safety on a firearm. It's a feature designed specifically to prevent you from accidentally pulling the trigger and shooting your own system in the foot.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. Let's walk through the mechanics of that safety feature. Why is that leading slash so dangerous?
Well, think about what an absolute path is. When we specify /tmp/auth-errors.txt, that leading slash anchors the file to the absolute root directory of the entire server.
Right.
If tar preserved that absolute path inside the archive, it would remember the exact rigid location. So imagine if we were archiving a highly sensitive system configuration file from the /etc directory.
Right. Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah. 6 months later, another admin takes that zipped archive and extracts it. If that leading slash was still there, the system would forcefully extract the file straight back to its original absolute location. It would instantly overwrite the live configuration file and potentially crash the server.
Precisely. It's terrifying to think about. By aggressively stripping away that leading slash, tar forces the archived files to become relative. When someone extracts that archive later, the system simply dumps the content safely into whatever directory the user happens to be standing in at that moment.
Which is so much safer.
Oh, infinitely. It makes the archive portable and neutralizes the risk of catastrophic overwrites. But as an exam candidate, you have to understand the mechanism behind that warning message, or you might panic during the test and think your command just failed.
Okay, so the file is safely zipped and sitting in the /opt directory. But right now, it's still owned by the root user, and anyone with read access could potentially snoop on it. We need to apply proper access controls.
We do. The compliance requirements explicitly stated the evidence must be strictly owned by the newly created audit user. To enforce this, we use chown change ownership. The command is chown audit-admin :audit-audit-audit-evidence.tar.gz.
So by specifying the name twice, separated by the colon, we're changing both the user ownership and the group ownership to audit admin. We're effectively locking out standard users and ensuring only the dedicated functional account has ultimate control over the evidence package.
Correct. It perfectly aligns the file with the strict Linux permission model.
So the environment is built, the regex extraction was flawless, the data is compressed, and the ownership is locked down. At this point, I feel like most people would just log off, grab a coffee, and call it a successful day.
And that instinct is exactly what separates amateurs from professionals. In system administration, assuming a command worked perfectly just because the terminal prompt returned without an explicit error, that's a recipe for disaster. We have to verify the work. We need undeniable proof.
Trust but verify. I completely agree. But wait, how do we actually verify a compressed archive? We don't want to extract it and clutter up the file system again just to look inside. How do we look inside the box without opening it?
We leverage tar one more time, but we change our approach. We run tar-tf/opt/audit-evidence.tar.gz. The -t flag stands for list contents. It doesn't extract a single byte of data.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it basically acts as an X-ray, scanning the archive and printing a list of exactly what's inside.
And when we look at that X-ray output, we're expecting to see our text file. But crucially, based on our earlier discussion, we expect to see it listed as tmp/auth-errors.txt- without that leading forward slash.
Correct. Seeing the relative path confirms both that the file is safely inside and that the mechanical safety feature worked exactly as intended. Once we confirm the contents, we have to verify the locks on the box. We run a simple ls-l against the archive file to expose its detailed metadata.
We're looking at the permission block first, right? We expect to see -r -r verifying that the owner has read and write access, while the group and others only have read access.
Yes. And right next to that permission block, we must verify the ownership columns explicitly read audit admin, audit admin.
Got it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this verification phase is not just a polite suggestion. It is how you grade your own paper before handing it in. The automated grading scripts used in the RHCSA exam are merciless.
I've heard that.
You can type 99% of the commands perfectly, but if a minor typo sent your output to the wrong directory, or, if you forgot the -viz flag and the archive isn't actually compressed, the script simply marks the entire task as a failure. Verifying the metadata is how you guarantee your points.
Grade your own paper. I really love that mindset. Now, there's one final phase detailed in our source material, and it's a strict zero-trace cleanup policy. We're instructed to forcefully delete the dummy mock log, our extracted text file, and the final compressed archive using the ARM command. We're also instructed to completely wipe the audit admin account using userdel.
Yep, burn it all down.
Right. But let me ask you about the specific syntax for the deletion. I know ARM removes files, but the source explicitly uses ARM-F. Why use a dash for the flag to force the deletion? I mean, we're operating as the root user. We own the files, so the system's going to let us delete them anyway.
It comes down to automation hygiene in unpredictable environments. In many enterprise systems, the basic ARM command is secretly aliased to ARM-I, which stands for interactive mode.
Oh, I hate that.
Right. This means the system will pause and ask you, are you sure you want to delete this? For every single file. If you're running an automated cleanup script and it suddenly pauses to wait for a human to type yes, the script hangs indefinitely and fails. Adding the dash flag forcefully overrides any interactive aliases, guaranteeing the deletion happens silently and completely.
So what does this all mean? I understand why we're meticulously cleaning up a practice lab. We want a blank slate so we can run through the scenario again tomorrow. But looking beyond the exam, wiping the audit admin user entirely, is that just tidying up, or is there a real-world security imperative here?
Oh, there is a massive real-world security imperative. Leaving test files, dummy logs, and especially temporary functional user accounts lying around on a production server is incredibly dangerous.
Right.
Yeah. An orphaned account like audit admin is an absolute goldmine for threat actors. If you leave it active, you've essentially left a door with a known username just sitting on your server. It has no clear human owner monitoring it. If an attacker eventually cracks the password, they are inside your environment, ready to move laterally or escalate privileges. Cleaning up your administrative footprints is a fundamental tenet of systems security.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
An unmonitored door is just asking to be rattled. Well, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. Let's just recap the journey real quick. We started by prepping our operating room, efficiently checking for our tools, and using evaluated string echoes to generate a realistic log file, one that accurately simulated the noise of a production environment. We then deploy the power of the Regex engine, using the extended -E flag to construct a state machine that simultaneously searched for multiple distinct failure patterns without, chewing up critical disk I/O or risking an accidental overwrite. We took that pristine extracted text, passed it through dictionary compression to shrink it, and navigated the absolute path trap to ensure our archive was portable and safe.
And then we locked it down.
Right. Finally, we locked down the permissions, used X-ray commands to verify every single step of our work, and wiped our tracks entirely to eliminate potential attack vectors.
It really is a phenomenal end-to-end workflow. It doesn't just test your ability to memorize syntax, it tests your underlying logic and your deep understanding of how the Linux file system actually operates.
And as you prepare for your exam, or just, your next day in the server room, remember that mastering these tools, learning how to seamlessly stitch together search pipelines, compression algorithms, and access controls is what separates a decent system administrator from a truly great one. Anyone can blindly copy a command from a forum, but deeply understanding the why behind the flags is where your real power lies.
Beautifully said.
But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Today, we used regular expressions to actively hunt for the words failure and failed in our logs. We were looking for the obvious red flags, the really loud anomalies. But in the real world of advanced cybersecurity, the most sophisticated and dangerous breaches often do not generate error messages at all. To the system, an attacker with stolen credentials looks like a perfectly normal, authorized login.
That's the scary part.
So if you had to audit a system tomorrow, how would you design a regular expression to search not for the presence of a loud failure, but for the subtle absence of expected normal behavior? Something to think about. Until next time.